This is Lesson 4.8, Triangles and Coordinate Proof. Your objective is to position and label triangles for use in coordinate proofs. A coordinate proof uses points, distances, and slopes to prove geometric properties. To do this, you're going to draw the shape on the coordinate plane, but you're not going to use actual numbers. You're going to use variables that give you the general values of the coordinates. So when you position these triangles on the coordinate plane, there's several tips to follow to make your work end up the best. Use the origin as a vertex or as the center of the figure. Place at least one side of the polygon on an axis. Using the origin and the axes will give you zeros for your coordinates, which make your computations easier to deal with. Try to stay in quadrant 1, that way you don't have any negative values, and use coordinates that make your computations as simple as possible. Name the missing coordinates of each triangle. For number 1, on this triangle, we're missing the x-coordinate of point C. Let's look at the rest of the picture. Point A is at the origin, so it's 0, 0. Point B is on the x-axis, so its y value is 0, and it's 2p to the right. And point C has a height of q. We also notice that this is an isosceles triangle. And isosceles triangles have symmetry and can be folded in half. If that can be folded in half, then consider the x value of point B. That's 2p to the right. Point C is only half that way over, and that distance would just be 1p. So the missing coordinate is p. So look for the clues. Since this is isosceles, it can be folded in half, and C is at the halfway mark. The whole distance was 2p, so the halfway mark is at 1p. Always try to make your answers use variables that are already being used. Try not to create another variable unless you absolutely have to. Number 2. Here we have a right isosceles triangle. Point R is at the origin, so it has the coordinates 0, 0. Point S is on the x-axis, so it has a y value of 0, and it's 2a to the right. We need both coordinates of point T. Notice the x-coordinate. T is the same distance to the right that point S is. Point S is 2a to the right, which means point T is also 2a to the right. Now, notice that this is an isosceles triangle. Because it's also a right triangle, the distance to the right is the same as the distance up. And that means that the height of point T is that same distance, 2a. So look for all the clues. Point T is the same distance to the right that point S is, so they're both 2a. And since the height is the same as the distance to the right, the height is also 2a. Question 3. This is also an isosceles triangle. We're missing both coordinates of point E and the x-coordinate of point F. Because it's isosceles, it can be folded in half, so we do have that symmetry. Because of that symmetry, point G is just as far to the right as point E is to the left. Point G is 2G units to the right. So that means that point E is 2G units to the left, and when you go left, that value is negative. So the x-coordinate is negative 2g. For the y-coordinate of point E is on the x-axis, so you don't go up or down any. The y-coordinate is 0. For point F, the x-coordinate is what we need. Since point F is on the y-axis, it doesn't go anywhere left or right, so the x-coordinate is 0. Always remember, when you're on one of the axes, you're going to have a 0 somewhere. If you're on the x-axis, y is 0, and if you're on the y-axis, x is 0. And remember the symmetry that an isosceles triangle has. Position and label each triangle on the coordinate plane. Now we have to draw the entire picture. Number 4. Isosceles triangle RST with base RS 4A units long. Remember the tips. Try to stay in quadrant 1 and try to use the origin as one of the points and use one of the axes as one of the sides. Since I'm talking about base RS, let's draw this so that segment RS is on the x-axis and that one of the endpoints is the origin. So let's see what coordinates we can figure out now. Since point R is at the origin, it has the coordinates 0, 0. Since they tell us that the base is 4A units long, that means that point S is 4A units to the right. So its x-coordinate is 4A. Since it's on the x-axis, the y-coordinate of point S is 0. Now for point T. Remember, this is an isosceles triangle, so it can be folded in half. Since S is 4A to the right, T is at the halfway point, so it's 2A to the right. It doesn't say anything about the height of this triangle, so I'm going to have to create a new variable for the height. Only create a new variable if you can't use an existing variable. So I'll use point B. So R has the coordinates 0, 0. S is 4A to the right, 0 up and down. T is at the halfway point, which is 2A to the right, and B units up.